The Fall of a Billionaire. Chapter 1. The Night They Locked Her Out. I thought I was the mother of his kids. Turns out I was just the woman who raised them. Tanya stood outside the house with a carry-on bag in one hand and a tray of leftover lasagna in the other, like she was showing up for a family reunion nobody invited her to. The porch light flickered overhead, same one she and Darnell put up back when they still believed in porch lights and forever. The screen door was cracked open just enough to hear the voices inside. "She show up again?" Rochelle said, her tone sharp like acrylic nails on glass. "I told her to call first," Darnell mumbled, trying to sound firm, but Tanya could hear the hesitation in his voice. "I ain't trying to deal with her mess, Dee, not tonight. Not with the boys upstairs sleeping." Tanya knocked gently, then louder. "Darnell, it's me. I just need a place tonight, just one night." No answer. She tried again. "I lost my shift at the diner. They closed early 'cause of that gas leak. I walked all the way from the bus stop. I ain't got no one else, Darnell." Nothing but the hum of the fridge inside and the low murmur of a TV. Then Rochelle's voice. "Don't open that door, Dee. She ain't your responsibility no more." That was it. The door didn't open. Tanya stood there like a fool, holding on to that damn tray of lasagna like it was her last bit of dignity. She finally turned around and stepped off the porch. Her feet hit the sidewalk, and just like that, she wasn't a wife anymore. Just some woman in the dark walking through a neighborhood she used to know. She passed the old corner store where Mr. Calvin used to sneak her son's candy when they had good report cards. She passed the park where Elijah learned to ride a bike and where Marcus busted his front tooth chasing a squirrel. Every piece of this street had her story on it, and yet none of it felt like hers now. At the bus stop bench, she sat down, lasagna still on her lap, and let out a laugh. Not a happy one, the kind of laugh that sounds like it came with a receipt. She whispered, "Ain't this a hell of a thing?" She pulled out her cracked phone. No missed calls, no messages. Just a low battery warning, like the phone itself was tired of her. Her thoughts drifted to the boys. She hated leaving them there, but it wasn't her choice no more. Rochelle had made that clear. Tanya used to believe you never leave your kids. But she also believed a man wouldn't throw out the mother of his children like old furniture. She leaned back and looked at the sky. Stars blinked through the clouds like they was ashamed to shine too bright. Somewhere in the distance a siren wailed and a baby cried. Life kept moving even when your heart stood still. She thought back to when she and Darnell first met at that old record store downtown. He'd been wearing a hoodie 3 sizes too big and still called her ma'am, like she was some church deaconess. He used to write her little poems on the back of gas station receipts. Said her smile could stop traffic, even in Atlanta. Now he couldn't even open the door. Tanya closed her eyes. She wasn't mad, not really, just tired. Tired of giving and being handed silence in return. Tired of feeling like a burden in a life she helped build. She looked down at the lasagna, cold now, and chuckled again. Guess I'm the crazy ex-wife who still tries to feed the family that left her hungry. Her phone buzzed once. It was Elijah. Just one word. "You okay?" She typed back, "Yeah, baby, I'm good." Then she turned off the phone. Ain't no point watching it die like everything else. She stood up, took the lasagna, and walked toward nowhere. Because sometimes being strong means knowing when to leave, and sometimes leaving is the only way they'll ever notice what they lost. Chapter 2. When Pride Pays. Late folks always say pride comes before the fall, but in Darnell's case, pride came with a leather couch, a high-interest car loan, and a woman who lit scented candles like it could fix a broken heart. The new house in Augusta had a fresh coat of paint and a smart fridge that talked more than he did. From the outside, his life looked like it had finally made it. On the inside, though, something wasn't sitting right. Tanya was gone. The boys were quiet. Rochelle was, well, Rochelle. Organized, stylish, and always on schedule. She kept the kitchen spotless and the calendar full. But the house felt colder than the leftover chicken in that fancy fridge. Darnell hadn't seen Tanya since that night on the porch, and he hadn't really tried. He figured she'd land on her feet. Tanya was strong, always had been. But that didn't stop the guilt from creeping in like a leaky faucet you pretend you don't hear until the water bill hits. Rochelle made it clear early on that Tanya was to stay in the past. "We're building something new," she said one morning while ironing Darnell's shirt like she was pressing wrinkles out of his memory. "You keep letting her hang around, we'll never move forward." So he let it be. He paid what the court said, picked up the boys every other weekend, and smiled for pictures. But something was off. Elijah barely talked anymore, always in his sketchbook, always watching. Marcus had picked up a nervous cough and carried around the same stuffed tiger he'd had since kindergarten, chewing on its ear when nobody was looking. One Saturday, Darnell tried to take them to the movies. Halfway through the popcorn, Marcus asked, "Why Mama can't come with us no more?" Darnell cleared his throat, said something about grown folks having differences, and changed the subject. But Elijah didn't let it slide. He looked right at his dad and said, "You locked her out." Darnell stared at the screen like it held the answer. The movie was some superhero mess, explosions and capes and fake justice. But the only thing blowing up that night was his conscience. Meanwhile, Tanya was figuring things out. She got a room behind Miss Estelle's laundromat on Carter Street. Tiny, loud, smelled like soap and regret. But it had a door that locked and a window that caught the sun just right in the mornings. She picked up shifts at a motel cleaning room, sometimes back to back. She didn't cry much, just kept moving, kept praying, kept her phone close in case the boys needed her. Her body ached. Her feet were killing her, but she was standing. That counted for something. At night, when the world slowed down, she'd lie on the twin mattress and stare at the ceiling, listening to the upstairs neighbor argue with her boyfriend about hot pockets and disrespect. Tanya would laugh sometimes, just quietly to herself. Because life was funny like that. One day you're building a life with someone, the next you're learning how to microwave dinner for one. She missed the boys, missed Elijah's quiet strength and Marcus's goofy hugs. But she knew better than to beg. She just waited, trusted that the truth has a way of coming home all on its own. Then came the whispers. At Darnell's job, his numbers started slipping. Clients pulled out without warning. His boss asked questions he didn't have answers for. Rochelle's boutique lost 2 vendors in 1 week. The AC went out. The plumber said the foundation had a crack. One thing after another, like God was gently tapping on his shoulder with a baseball bat. Darnell brushed it off. "It's just a bad season," he told himself. "Everyone goes through stuff." But at 3 a.m., When the house was still and Rochelle was snoring with one leg hanging off the bed, Darnell would sit in the kitchen, drink cold coffee, and think about that porch. That look in Tanya's eyes. That moment when he turned the lock and shut the door. It haunted him. Not like a ghost, more like a shadow that followed him everywhere, just out of sight. Then one morning, he got a call from his mama, Miss Loretta. She wasn't the type to sugarcoat anything. "I heard what you did to that girl," she said before he could even say hello. "Mama, it ain't like that. You think 'cause you got a nice house and some pretty light-skinned woman feeding you gluten-free biscuits that you can throw away the mother of your kids like last year's paper? I ain't throw her away. You ain't catch her either." Click. Darnell stared at the phone like it owed him an apology. But it didn't, and neither did Tanya. He looked around the kitchen. The marble counters, the stainless steel everything, the untouched fruit bowl. Everything looked clean, perfect, and completely empty. Something had cracked. He just didn't know yet how deep it went. But the silence in that house was starting to feel louder than any fight they ever had. And for the first time in months, Darnell realized peace don't come from a pretty house. It comes from knowing you ain't the villain in somebody else's story. And right now, he was. Chapter 3. The boys had enough. Sometimes it ain't the grown-ups who see the truth first. Sometimes it's the kids sitting there quiet, watching everything like little judges with crayons in their pockets. It was a Wednesday when Elijah made the call. He sat in the back seat of Darnell's car, looking out the window like the trees was gonna give him an answer. Marcus was next to him, knocking his sneaker against the seat, humming a tune their mama used to sing while cooking beans. Rochelle was inside the house somewhere, arguing with a customer on speakerphone about a return policy, and Darnell was outside talking loud on his Bluetooth headset, pacing like he owned the sidewalk. Elijah pulled out the phone Tanya gave him when they moved. Prepaid, cracked screen still worked fine, and he called her. "Can we come stay with you?" he asked. Tanya was sitting on a crate in the back of the laundromat, eating cold fries out of a styrofoam box. She paused, wiped her hands, and asked, "Is everything okay?" "I just want to come home," he said. "We just want to be with you again." That was all it took. Tanya didn't ask questions. She didn't make a speech. She just said, "All right, baby. Tell your daddy y'all want to spend the weekend. I'll be ready." That Friday, they came with their little bags and big hearts. Elijah had a backpack full of books and drawings, and Marcus brought his tiger, still missing an ear. Darnell didn't say much when he dropped them off. Just nodded, said, "I'll be back Sunday," like he believed it. But Sunday came and went. So did Monday, then a whole week. The boys didn't ask to leave, and Tanya didn't bring it up. They'd found their way back home without even meaning to. The apartment behind the laundromat was small, yeah. 2 rooms, creaky floorboards, one wobbly fan that sounded like it was clapping off beat. But it had love in every corner. Tanya made pancakes too thick and eggs too salty, but the boys ate 'em like they came from heaven. They laughed loud, stayed up late watching old cartoons, and built pillow forts like it was their job. At night, Tanya tucked them in the same way she used to before everything got flipped upside down. Kissed their foreheads, whispered prayers over their dreams, and sat by the window after they slept, watching the world like it owed her something. One evening, Marcus crawled into her lap without saying a word. He just sat there, holding that tiger, head on her chest, breathing real slow. Tanya didn't ask. She just rocked him, slow and steady, like she was swaying pain into peace. Elijah, from the doorway, asked, "Mama, why did Daddy stop loving you?" Tanya swallowed hard, looked at her hands. "Sometimes folks forget who loved them first," she said, "but that don't mean they stopped being loved." Elijah nodded like he understood. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he just needed to hear her say it. Back at Darnell's house, the silence was loud. Rochelle asked where the boys were. Darnell said they wanted to stay longer, and she rolled her eyes, said something slick under her breath, then went back to her laptop. The fridge was full, the lights stayed on, and yet it felt like everything was dying slow. Darnell sat on the couch one night with a glass of ginger ale and memories he didn't ask for. He remembered Elijah's first haircut, how Tanya cried more than the boy did. He remembered Marcus learning to ride a bike, falling into bushes while Tanya clapped like he won the Olympics. And now his sons had chosen peace over comfort, love over marble floors. And that hurt in a way he wasn't ready for. One morning he picked up the phone to call Tanya, just to ask how they were, just to hear her voice, but he froze, couldn't press the button. Pride sat on his chest like a brick in a raincoat, but pride don't raise no boys, and guilt don't make no family whole. Meanwhile, Elijah started drawing again. Only this time he drew pictures of a house with 3 bedrooms, one for each of them. Marcus wrote a note on a piece of lined paper and left it under Tanya's pillow. "I like it better here. You smell like pancakes and prayers." Tanya smiled when she found it, folded it up and put it in her Bible. Right next to Psalm 126, the one about those who sow in tears will reap in joy, because even when life falls apart, love still knows how to find its way home. Sometimes it just needs a little help from the kids. Chapter 4, What Broke Had to Be Fixed. Sometimes the hardest walk a man can take is the one from his car to a door he used to call home. It was a cloudy Saturday in Augusta, the kind of day when the sky looked tired and the air felt like it had secrets. Darnell sat in his car outside the laundromat apartments for almost 20 minutes, engine off, hands on the wheel, heart pounding like it owed somebody money. He didn't bring flowers, didn't bring a speech. Just a grocery bag in one hand and a whole lot of guilt in the other. When he finally knocked, Tanya opened the door slow, like she already knew who it was. Her hair was tied up in one of them lazy day scarves, and she had on a t-shirt that read, "Not today, Satan." She looked tired, but still stood tall. Her eyes didn't say much, but they didn't need to. Darnell had already said enough with his silence. "I ain't come to fight," he said. "Ain't come to explain either." She didn't move, didn't smile, just looked at him. "I brought groceries," he added, holding the bag up like it was piece on sale. Tanya stepped aside, let him in without a word. The place was small, yeah, but it smelled like cinnamon and cleaning spray, and there were drawings taped to the fridge. Elijah's. Marcus's toy tiger sat on the arm of the couch like it was keeping watch. Darnell stood awkward in the middle of the living room. It felt like standing in a memory he wasn't sure he still belonged to. The boys were at a neighbor's house for a sleepover. Just him and her, and the truth hanging in the air like thick Georgia heat. "I messed up, T," he said finally. "I really messed up." Tanya crossed her arms and leaned against the counter. "You did," He chuckled low. You ain't even gonna argue? I'm too tired to fight, she said. But I ain't too tired to forgive. Eventually. That hit him harder than a sermon on Sunday. They sat at the table with 2 chipped coffee mugs between them. Tanya poured him some instant coffee like old times, but this time it wasn't comfort. It was history. He told her how things fell apart. The money troubles, Rochelle bouncing when the bills showed up before the blessings. How the house with all the square footage still felt smaller than this 2-bedroom apartment behind a laundromat. Tanya didn't say, I told you so. She just listened, stirring sugar into her mug like it was the only thing she had control over. That was Tanya's gift. She could make silence feel like a conversation and a stare feel like a sentence. That night he stayed for dinner. Tanya cooked up some baked chicken, overcooked a little, but the boys would have loved it. The rice was sticky and the peas were frozen, but it was the best meal he'd had in months, maybe years. Because it tasted like something money couldn't buy. It tasted like mercy. Later they sat on the couch and flipped through Elijah's sketchbook. Page after page of little drawings. A house with a porch swing, a woman with curly hair and tired eyes, a man holding a bag of groceries, and 2 boys standing in between. No labels, no names. Just a picture of what could be. Tanya looked at Darnell and said, I ain't asked for much, just to be seen, to be heard. Not tossed out like I ain't build the very foundation you standin' on. He nodded. I know. Do you, though? He nodded again, slower this time. I know now. She didn't smile, but she didn't cry either, which honestly felt like progress. Later that night, while Tanya folded laundry and Darnell helped her pair socks that didn't match, she looked over and said, You still got that job? Nah, he said. But I'm teaching coding at the community center. Ain't glamorous, but it's honest. She nodded. That's good. They didn't talk about getting back together, not then. Maybe not ever. But there was a kind of peace in that apartment. The kind that only comes when 2 people finally stop trying to win and just start trying to understand. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes healing ain't a parade. It's just folding socks with the person who once broke your heart and realizing they still know where everything goes. Chapter 5. Home ain't a house. The sky over Augusta had that orange-pink glow it only got in early spring, like even the sun was trying to start fresh. Tanya sat on the porch swing that Elijah built with his own 2 hands. It creaked a little, leaned left, but it held steady, kind of like her heart these days. She rocked slow, sipping sweet tea with too much lemon, watching Marcus try to teach their neighbor's dog how to sit. The dog wasn't getting it. But that boy had patience. Got that from her. Inside, Darnell was fixing a loose cabinet hinge, wearing a t-shirt with paint stains and a frown like he was doing open-heart surgery. He still showed up every morning to help out. Never asked to move back in, but he didn't really leave either. It was a rhythm now, and it worked. Elijah came out holding a flyer. He got invited to a youth tech summit in Atlanta. Tanya smiled big and clapped like he'd won the lottery. Darnell came out the kitchen with a screwdriver still in his hand and grinned like he used to before the world got messy. They were figuring it out, this new kind of family, one built on honesty instead of history. Ain't perfect, but it was real. Later that week, Tanya got invited to speak at a local women's group. Nothing fancy. Just folding chairs in a church basement, women with tired eyes and strong backs. She told her story, not to get sympathy, but to give somebody else the strength to stand up. She talked about starting over, about pride and forgiveness, about how sometimes the people you love will hurt you the worst, and how healing don't come in one big moment. It comes in quiet ways, like a child crawling into your lap, like a knock on the door you thought would never come. Darnell sat in the back, holding Marcus in his lap, nodding along like he was in church. That summer, Tanya got promoted to manager at the hotel. Elijah started a coding club for kids who didn't even own laptops. Using second-hand computers, he fixed up himself. Marcus won second place in a school talent show doing a comedy act that included imitating his dad fixing that same cabinet for 2 whole weeks. And Darnell, he stayed. Not as a husband, not yet, but as a father who showed up, did the work, and kept his mouth shut when Tanya was talking. He planted tomatoes in the backyard. Tanya hated tomatoes, but she let 'em grow. Said sometimes you gotta let things grow just to see if they bear fruit. One evening, while the boys were chasing fireflies and arguing over who caught more, Tanya and Darnell sat side by side on the swing. Quiet. The kind of quiet that said, "I see you, I remember who you were, and I see who you're trying to be." He looked over and asked, "You ever think we might try again, me and you?" Tanya took another sip of tea. Let the moment breathe. "I think," she said, "we already are, just not the way we used to." And that was enough. Because home ain't always the house you build. Sometimes it's the people who help you carry your heavy. The ones who don't run when things fall apart. The ones who show up with groceries, pick up your kids, fold your laundry, fix your cabinets wrong, and never ask for applause. Home is love with its sleeves rolled up, and that's what they had now. Not perfect, but whole. And in this little house in Georgia, behind a swing that leaned left, that was more than enough.